Good afternoon. My name is Ben Glassman, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio. I'm joined here at the podium by the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI Cincinnati Division, Joe Dieters, as well as Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. We're here this afternoon to announce the first wave of charges arising out of a long-term investigation into suspected public corruption here in Dayton, Ohio. What we're going to do in this conference this afternoon is I'm going to go through and explain the charges, and then I'm going to yield the podium to Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dieters and Attorney General Yost, who will have some comments as well. After they speak, I'm going to return and answer any questions that you have. But I should say, before we get started on explaining these charges, the disclaimer that I always give, which is that these are indictments, and indictments are just allegations. They're just putting the defendants on notice with what they're charged with. These defendants are presumed innocent unless and until the United States proves them guilty with evidence beyond reasonable doubt in court. So please keep that in mind as I describe the allegations of the indictment. With that said, there are 4 individuals charged here today in 4 indictments. First up is Joey Williams, who is charged with 1 count of bribery. According to the allegation of the indictment, in calendar year 2015, Mr. Williams solicited and accepted bribes totaling over $50,000 in cash and benefits from a person whose business was seeking contracts with the city of Dayton. In exchange, according to the indictment, Mr. Williams exerted influence to cause Dayton and its development arm to award contracts totaling over $150,000 to the company of that individual. Next charged is Roshan Winburn, who, according to the indictment in his case, is the director of the Minority Business Assistance Center here in Dayton. He is charged in 3 counts of honest services wire fraud, 2 counts of bribery, and 1 count of lying to the FBI. According to the allegations in that indictment, between 2014 and 2015, Winburn accepted cash payments totaling approximately $20,000, and in exchange, he falsely certified entities to participate in disadvantaged business programs, and also provided confidential, non-public information to those companies or individuals that provided him with bribes regarding future opportunities for bids on contracts that the city of Dayton would award. So, in other words, trying to give them a leg up on the bidding for possible contracts. The third person charged in a separate indictment is Clayton Lucky, a businessman here in Dayton and former state official. And according to the indictment in that case, from 2016 to 2017, Lucky proposed to another company and then did falsely act as a front for that other company to satisfy disadvantaged business enterprise certification requirements. He's charged with 1 count of mail fraud, 1 count of wire fraud. And then the last person charged is Brian Higgins in a separate indictment, who is a businessman here, charged with 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of wire fraud. And that relates to an insurance fraud, which is not itself strictly related to public corruption, but it arose out of the same investigation, which is why that indictment is being handed down and unsealed at the same time today. Let me speak for just a moment on why it's so important to investigate and prosecute public corruption. And I want to bring it down to an everyday level. If you go to the BMV and you satisfy the objective criteria for getting a driver's license, the clerk is required to give that license to you. He's not doing you a favor by giving you the license. And that's true in your everyday experience going to get a driver's license. It's just as true when we're talking about getting contracts from public entities. When you have public corruption, in this sense, it undermines law. It's the opposite of the law. And that is why I and everyone who stands here today is committed to devoting whatever resources are necessary to investigate and prosecute public corruption to the fullest extent of the law. This investigation has been going on for quite some time. It has been covert till now. Now, as you can see, the investigation is overt. We ask for the public's assistance in this ongoing investigation, and Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dieters will be able to explain the way that the public can assist law enforcement in this investigation. So I'm now going to yield the podium to Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dieters. He will speak, and then Attorney General Yost will speak before I will retake the podium and answer any questions that you might have.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Glassman. Again, my name is Joseph Dieters. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in Charge for the FBI Cincinnati Division. I'd like to start by thanking all the agencies involved, to include the United States Attorney's Office, the Ohio Attorney General's Office, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the State Auditor's Office, who have worked with the FBI's Southern Ohio Public Corruption Task Force to investigate and arrest the 4 individuals who've been indicted. This has been a lengthy investigation using a variety of sophisticated investigative methods to uncover what appears to be a culture of corruption in Dayton area politics. The 4 individuals who've been indicted are alleged to be the perpetrators of 3 separate corruption schemes. This investigation into corruption in the Dayton area remains ongoing and is likely to produce more arrests in the future. Public corruption is the top criminal priority for the FBI because government corruption impacts all taxpayers, erodes public confidence, and undermines the strength of our democracy. Today's arrest should serve as a wake-up call. This type of behavior will not be tolerated, it will be investigated and prosecuted. Those involved in bribery and fraud will face jail time. The people of Dayton deserve better. That is why the special agents and task force officers from the Southern Ohio Public Corruption Task Force have worked long and hard to bring us to this day. The FBI works closely with our partners to root out corruption. While this can be a difficult task, it is crucial to protecting the public and the trust that has been built in our government institutions. The American people should not be tolerant of public corruption, but instead demand those in public office and those doing business with public agencies follow the law. When individuals become aware of potential corruption, we encourage them to come forward and report criminal abuses to the FBI. This information is critical to our work. Many of our investigations start with a tip from someone who encounters corruption in the community. We ask for anyone with information related to these individuals' alleged practices or other related corruption to contact the FBI Public Corruption Tip Line. And I'd like to give you a number. The phone number is 937-291-5222. Again, 937-291-5222. Public corruption can be difficult to detect without the assistance of concerned citizens. We urge anyone with additional information to contact us so this work to restore accountability in government continues. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dave Yost. I'm the Ohio Attorney General. This is actually a pretty big moment for me because I used to be the Ohio Auditor of State, which is also our office then was part of the Southern Ohio Public Corruption Task Force. And so I've seen this investigation from 2 vantage points, and it's good to see these first indictments. The main point that I want to add is this is not a victimless crime. I know that there's some cynics out there that say if it bleeds, it leads. Well, what's bleeding here is our trust in government. The victims of this crime are each and every citizen who pays their taxes, who follows the law, and trusts our government officers to make honest decisions by the book, by the numbers. And the evidence, I'm convinced, will show in this case that that's not what happened in these cases. This is not the end of the road. And I want to assure everyone and let the message go out that the state government, that the local jurisdictions, that the federal government are cooperating on these matters. There isn't competition. There is hand-in-glove cooperation. and we are not going to give up. We're not going to give in. Thank you, Mr. U.S. Attorney.
Thanks. Yeah, as the Attorney General said, this has been a cooperative and continues to be a cooperative investigation by the FBI Southern Ohio Public Corruption Task Force, which includes the FBI, the Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the Ohio Auditor's Office, all working together. I would like to commend all of them for their efforts in this investigation, as well as commend Assistant U.S. Attorneys Brent Tabacci, Dominic Gervais, and Samit Harden, who are prosecuting the case. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yes.
David Ezrati, Ezrati.com. I find it interesting that this first round of indictments is all African-American males. This culture of corruption in Dayton's been going on for a long time. We had Wright State where $130 million disappeared and nobody was let off in cuffs. We have a school board member who committed voter fraud, broke laws. I reached out to offices. He received money from the Azerbaijani laundromat. Nothing happened.
Well, what is the
Are
question?
you only prosecuting black African-American males? Because this is the first indictment. You're putting people in handcuffs over $150,000 when we had $130 million disappear at Wright State, and no investigation has come close to this.
We would ask you to take your any complaints about any allegations of criminal wrongdoing that have not been investigated to the FBI.
I have taken them.
For a second about how far back this goes, and then to today, when will those people make their appearance in court here?
Those people will make their appearance in court at 1:30 before Judge Newman on the 5th floor. The investigation goes back quite some time. The allegations in the indictment themselves date back to 2014, 2015. I think it's fair to say the investigation's been going on for a number of years.
Mr. Attorney, can you outline at this current time, as best you can, what the investigation, where it stands right now as far as current government employees in the city of Dayton?
So I'm not going to identify any additional targets or subjects of the investigation other than to say, as my colleagues have said, that this investigation has been covert till now, but it is now overt. This is the first wave of indictments. I do expect there to be additional charges, but we would definitely appreciate the public's assistance in any information that members of the public have regarding these types of allegations, bring them to the attention of the FBI.
If convicted, what kind of prison sentences would they be looking at?
It varies. If you, for example, with respect to the first case, which is against Mr. Williams, that is a single count of bribery, so that's up to 10 years in prison. Mr. Winburn is charged with multiple counts of honest services, mail-in wire fraud. Each one carries up to 20 years in prison, plus bribery counts, which are up to 10 years in prison, and then a count of lying to the FBI is up to 5 years in prison. We're talking wire and mail fraud in the two other cases, Lucky and Higgins, and so as to both of them, those counts are each up to 20 years in prison.
You mentioned this was the first wave. What do you expect next as far as any further?
Now that the investigation is open and overt, I expect there to be more arrests and more charges going forward. But in order to complete the ongoing investigation, we really could use the public's assistance.
Mr. Attorney, at this time, is there any good elements of Dayton city government that you can point to? Or should people be worried about the entire council structure?
So all we're talking about right here today are the people who are charged here today. I'm not talking about anyone who is not charged. I would say that we've got multiple different people who were employees of the city of Dayton or former employees of the city of Dayton, elected officials or employees who, according to the allegations of the indictment, participated in corrupt schemes to defraud the citizens of good government. And so to the extent that the public or members of those offices are aware of other people who are engaged in similar misconduct, we'd like to know about that.
Could you characterize the arrest this morning? Were there any problems? What locations those were done?
I don't want to get into the specifics with respect to the arrest, but I will say that pursuant to the indictments, there were arrest warrants issued for each of the people charged.
Specific to what you're asking the public to do, who were you expecting to call you to come forward? How would they know if there's a problem?
I would say that anyone who has a suspicion or knowledge, anyone who has knowledge of corrupt activities, pay to play, bribery, solicitation of bribery, giving out confidential information ahead of time, one of the things that's alleged here. Maybe people wondered why that was being done. Maybe they have knowledge of information that was being given out, or people being pressured to award contracts to favored individuals. Anyone with that kind of knowledge, I'd like to hear from them.
When will the people who paid the bribes face charges? The ones who provided the $50,000 allegedly to Williams or to Winburn?
So I'm not in a position to discuss the charges of anyone other than the people who are charged here today. As I said, it's an ongoing investigation, however. Yes.
With the understanding that they're going to court at 1:30, could you talk about bond, possible bond, if they get bond?
I would anticipate that that's a decision up to the judge, but I would anticipate that these defendants will receive bond.
The indictments of Winburn, Lucky, and Williams all talk about demolition and construction contracts. The biggest demolition contractor in Dayton is Steve Roush, and he's facing state charges in a separate investigation. Is the attorney?
When we identify companies or individuals by like Company A, there's a reason why we're identifying them as Company A rather than identifying them by name. So I'm not going to speak to any further as to the identity of those individuals or companies who are identified by letters in the indictment.
Can you talk about how many hours have been spent investigating this particular crime?
I could not put a number on it, but I will say that as Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dieter said, this has been the top priority of the FBI for a long time, and they've been working closely not only with the Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the Auditor of State, but with my office. So we've been working closely together to supervise this investigation for quite a while. And I think, as all of us have said, to my way of thinking, you can't put a number on or a price tag in terms of resources on what we're going to spend in order to investigate and prosecute public corruption. It's that important.
Can you assure the public this has nothing to do with black or white? There was a crime committed.
All we go with is where the evidence leads. So there is absolutely no prosecutorial or investigatory decisions ever made with respect to anyone's race, creed, color, anything like that. We're strictly talking about the crimes charged.
Question for the Attorney General, sir. Anecdotally, in your time in this office or others in state government, how does this investigation and this corruption and fraud compare to other areas of the state?
This is a very significant case. I don't think that you can really rank them. I will say that in the experience I've had at the state level, this is one of the most cooperative multi-jurisdictional cases I've seen.
It seems that the indictments were separate there were separate indictments. Are they separate schemes? And did you uncover one and then lead to another and then to another, or?
So they are separate schemes. As far as how we uncovered them, I think all I want to say is that all of these charges arose out of the same investigation into suspected public corruption in the Dayton, Ohio area.
You mentioned jail time is a possibility if successful with prosecution. Will your office be recommending jail time for these defendants?
Oh man, we never get into talking about what we would recommend for jail time when we're just at a charging stage. Number one, we've got to make sure that we don't prejudice anybody's fair trial rights. That's a big concern with how we go about talking about these things, because I want to keep the public informed. I want the public to assist us, but we want to make sure that everybody who's charged gets a fair trial, number one. And then number two is, at this stage, we'll worry about that stuff way down the road.
Would Mr. Lucky face more time since he just got out of state prison not that long ago?
I can't speak to that.
Is the city of Dayton the only jurisdiction you're investigating?
This particular investigation concerns suspected public corruption in the Dayton, Ohio area. Are there
It's like one more question.
one more question?
What investigation techniques did you guys use? Did you wires, wiretap, surveillance, confidential informants, sting, business fronts, all of the above?
So I hesitate to give you a very good answer as to all of the different types of investigative techniques that we used in this case and that we may still be using with respect to the ongoing investigation. I think that it's fair to say, as Assistant Special Agent in Charge Dieter said, multiple different investigative techniques were used. in order to make sure that we are bringing prosecutable cases.
Thank you.
Thank you.